Hey there, it's me SHANiA and I'm back again with another tutorial.
SHANiA.
If you're new to this channel, my name is SHANiA and I love to show you guys how to make clothes. Sometimes I show you how to make clothes from scratch and sometimes I show you how to make clothes from something that already exists, and I just show you how to transform it, which is exactly what I'm going to be showing you today. I'm going to show you how to take a regular button-down collared shirt and turn it into a super cute puff-sleeved button-down shirt. So let's get into the tutorial. Alright, so the first thing that you need to do is you need to take a pre-existing collared shirt, or any shirt you want to use really, and you need to take out the sleeves. So if they don't have sleeves, if it's like a sleeveless shirt, even better. But if you do have sleeves, then you want to take your seam ripper or your seam cutter and you want to take those sleeves out, okay? Alright. I want to take my sleeve pattern and I just want to trace it onto another sheet of paper. Because we're gonna manipulate it so that we can create our puff sleeve, okay? So once I've traced my sleeve pattern onto another sheet of paper, I'm going to divide the pattern into 5 pieces. First, you want to fold your sleeve pattern in half, and then you want to crease the fold of the paper. Then you're going to use a marker to darken the crease. This crease is going to be the center line. From the top of this center line, you're going to measure and mark 1.5 inches. From that mark, you're going to measure and mark another 1.5 inches. You're going to repeat the same steps on the other side of the center crease line. And then when you're done, you should have 4 marks like this. And then you want to extend these lines so that they reach the wrist line of your sleeve pattern. I'm using an L-shaped ruler because it helps to make sure that the lines are perfectly squared off, but you could use a regular ruler if that's all that you have. Once you're done, you want to separate the cuff part of your pattern. So I originally had measured 3 inches up, but realized it looked a little too short. So your better bet is to go with 6 inches up from the wrist line, make a mark, and then extend that line all the way to the other side of the pattern. And I'm just going to cut it out so that I have 2 separate pattern pieces. So this part here will be the bottom part of our sleeve. Now you want to label your pattern piece and you want to remember to add which direction the fabric should stretch. So here I'm using 2 pieces of tracing paper that's taped together just so that I have enough space to trace my sleeve block, and I've placed my sleeve block down on the tracing paper, and now I'm just going to cut straight lines just along these lines that I've highlighted here on the diagram. You want to make sure that when you're cutting through the lines you don't cut all the way down to the bottom, but if you do by accident the way that I did, it should be okay. So the first thing I'm starting with is I'm taping down the center panel just so that I can make sure the pattern doesn't shift. And then from there you want to separate each of the panels to the left and the right of that center panel. I separated my panels by 1.5 inches each, and my sleeve didn't come out super puffy, so I recommend separating your panels by at least 3 inches for a really puffed out sleeve. Once you start to separate your panels, you'll notice that the bottom of each of the panels will start to curve a bit, and this is totally fine. In fact, you want to make sure that they do curve, because if they don't, then you're not going to have flexible panels. Starting at the center panel crease line, you're going to measure and mark 1.5 inches up. Then you're going to draw a curved line from the point of the first panel that connects to that mark we made, and then you're going to repeat the same step with the last panel. So once you draw those 2 lines, you'll see you have a curved line, and then I just traced over my line with a Sharpie so that it could be darker. And this will be your new sleeve pattern once you just trace the top edge of the first and the last panel. Now in theory you could cut this out and trace it on another sheet of paper, but I'm just going to directly cut out this pattern and put it on top of my fabric So the next thing you want to do is you want to label your pattern. So I've labeled the grain line, I've labeled it a puff sleeve, non-stretch, cut 2 times, seam allowance is not included, and you also want to include a flip mark so that you know for the second sleeve you need to flip the pattern and trace it. So now you want to take your pattern and you want to transfer it onto your fabric. I'm using organza fabric because I just love that style and I think it's super cute and classy, but you can feel free to use any type of fabric you want, like silk or denim or whatever it is. Like, use your imagination, fly. So once I've transferred my pattern to my fabric, I've added my seam allowance, and I'm just going to also transfer the markings so that I know, like, okay, this is the front of the sleeve and this is the back of the sleeve. That's super important for how your sleeve is going to fit and sit on your shoulders and your arms. So then once I do that, I'm going to cut out the sleeves. The next thing then that I want to do is I want to serge all around my sleeve pattern. So I'm going to serge the whole perimeter for both sleeves. Now I'm using some stretch black fabric, and I'm making sure that the direction of the stretch of the fabric is the same as what I have labeled on my pattern piece. So then I'm going to take my pattern piece and fold it in half, and I'm going to fold the fabric in half as well so that the wrong side is on the outside. Then measure and mark a 1/2 inch from the fold of the pattern, and you're just going to fold over the pattern along that mark and then place it on top of the fabric and trace it, and then add seam allowance. Once you open up the pattern, you'll see that you need to transfer over the rest of the line, and you're going to repeat this step for the second piece of fabric, and then from there you're just going to serge along this pattern piece and you'll have 2 pieces like this. So I ended up needing to take off about an inch from both sides of the pattern piece just because it was a little too big, and you want to accommodate the stretch of the fabric. Okay, so now we have these big fat sleeves and they're huge, and we need to make sure that they are gathered and become puffy so that we can actually easily connect them to the armhole. There are a few different ways you can gather the fabric, but I'm going to be using the gathering foot method. So check out this video here to see the different ways you can gather your fabric. So this is the gathering foot here, and I'm starting off with long thread tails, and I am starting at a 1/2 inch in from the side seam allowance and a 1/4 inch below the top seam allowance. And once I start stitching, I'm not doing a back stitch. I'm just going to stitch straight, and then at the end I'm going to cut off a long thread tail as well. So when you're done, you'll have 2 long thread tails, and we're going to use these thread tails to actually gather the sleeve, and I'll show you how to do that a little later. So now to connect the bottom part of our sleeve, you're going to take the organza fabric and you're going to flip it so that it's right side facing up, and you're going to rotate it upside down so that the armhole part is at the bottom and then the wrist part is at the top. You're going to take your other half of the fabric and turn it so that it's right side facing the right side of the organza fabric. You're going to measure and mark the 1/2 point of both the organza fabric as well as the solid fabric, and then you're going to pin both pieces together at the side, the middle point, and the other side, and then you're going to do a zigzag stitch, and you're lightly going to stretch both layers of the fabric as you sew so that the bottom part of the sleeve gathers the organza part of the sleeve. And when you're done, it will look something like this. And then next, I just want to hem the bottom of both sleeves by folding it over along the seam allowance line, pinning it, and then just doing a zigzag stitch across that edge. The next thing I want to do is I want to close up the sleeves. So I'm basically just going to kind of fold it in half so that both sides, both edges of the sleeve pattern touch, and then I'm just going to do a straight stitch all the way down. When you're done, your sleeve should look something like this, and we're just going to turn it so that it's right side out, and you see the seam allowance line here. So now we're going to take our sleeve, and we want to make sure that the double notch is on the back side, so that way we know that our sleeve is correctly aligned with the armhole. So I'm just showing you here the stitches for the seam allowance that was naturally there in my shirt where I took out the stitches. So later on when I refer to this, then you know what I'm talking about. So now you want to line up the seam of the armhole to the seam of the sleeve with right sides facing, and you're going to pin it down. You're going to hold on to where you placed your pin, and you're just going to turn your shirt inside out so that the sleeve is now underneath the shirt. And once you do that, you'll see now through the armhole, you can see your sleeve sticking through. So you can see that the sleeve is smaller than the armhole. So I'm just going to loosen up the gather so that the circumference of the sleeve is the same circumference of the armhole, and I'm just going to pin all around both layers. And it's easier to just start with the side and then just kind of work your way all around the circumference. And then I'm just going to do a straight stitch along that seam allowance line that I had showed you before. And then I'm taking my time since I'm stitching a circle. And once I've finished stitching, then it should look something like this. Next thing you want to do is you just want to serge the seam allowance edge. Again, if you don't have a serger, you can just use a regular sewing machine with the zigzag stitch set to the shortest length. And when you're done, it looks something like this. Now, when you try on your shirt, you'll notice that the flap kind of sticks out through the organza fabric. So you just want to tuck it down and then do a top stitch all along the armhole. And once you're done, you want to just repeat these same steps with your other sleeve, and it'll look something like this. Overall, I'm very happy with how this shirt came out. The only thing is that I wish I would have made the puff sleeve pattern more puffier, and if you're looking for a puffier sleeve, just make sure that when you're doing the slash and spread method that you're separating each of the panels by about at least 3 inches. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that it was easy to understand and to follow. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you need more of a quick response, just hit me up on Instagram. Just send me a DM because I'm on Instagram like all the time. Definitely help to share my channel and this video. Like, get me the love that I think I deserve. So share this video on your social media, whether it's Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, whatever it is that you do. And yeah, I would really appreciate that. So until next time, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Ciao.